All right, so today is Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. My name is Grace Park, and I am interviewing Dr. Jaymin Kim on behalf of the Houston Asian American Archive at Rice University. So first, I'm going to ask you a few questions regarding your early life. So
Okay.
when and where were you born?
Oh, yes. I was born in Seoul, South Korea, in 1986. And, I grew up with my grandparents in Jeju Island until I was like 7, 8, and then went back to Seoul to live with my parents. Lived there until I was 15, and then moved to Waco, Texas, and did high school there and stuff.
I see. Do you have any special memories of any special holidays or traditions that you experienced while growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a big chunk of time in Korea. So, yeah, I remember just Lunar New Year, I remember because I really liked you know, Dakguk growing up. They did the, rice cake stew. So, it was a really nice time for the family. And yeah, I mainly remember the two big holidays, Lunar New Year, Chuseok, the like Thanksgiving sort of holiday. Yeah.
I see. The next question is, what were your parents' occupations and what are some of the values and lessons that they instilled in you?
Yeah. So yeah, kind of a tricky question in a way because so my mom, I know, used to be a nurse for like the first 10 years of her professional life, but then, she quit that job and then was helping my dad out. He ran like a few businesses that, didn't do well in the end, but one of them was like publishing business. So I do remember just maybe like 9, 10 years old, they had this like office full of books and stuff. And I just remember, hanging out there a lot, being surrounded by books and reading some of them because they had some comics and stuff too. So I do remember that. But after that, my dad went to a seminary and became a pastor for the, like Presbyterian church. And then he decided that he actually liked studying better than being a pastor. So he went on to study more, and that's how we ended up in Waco because he ended up doing his PhD at Baylor University in the Department of Religion. So it was just him there for a while, but I'm an only child, and there was like, not making a lot of sense for a family of three to be split apart. So me and my mom, we joined him in Waco when I was 15.
I see.
Mhm.
So you kind of mentioned that you kind of grew up like being surrounded by books.
Yeah.
It's your dad's company. So kind of in
Mhm.
relation to that, what was your favorite subject in school and what were some of your aspirations or if you had one, like a dream career as a child?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always like historical books. I think my favorites were like like I really liked reading about like, you know, like historical like, heroes. I like reading about knights, medieval age, also like reading about, like so like I remember there was like this like 3 volume, like I guess like abridged translation of the biographies from Sima Qian's histories. And that's was really something that was fascinating to me because I really liked learning about people. All these heroes, they have their, strong suits, but they also have like, their faults because they're human. And I really found that fascinating, but I didn't think that was going to be my profession. So I thought, in school, I was always good at like social sciences and I was like pretty good at math and science, but I decided that medicine was not for me when I was taking biology, AP biology in high school. Just didn't like the subject that much. So then I thought maybe I would do, like maybe major in poli sci or something and, learn history as a hobby and maybe go into law school. Oh, excuse me, sorry. Just let me put my phone on silent. I think it was some sort of like scam call. But anyway, so yeah, I thought I was going to, major in poli sci or something because that sounded right for a pre-law major. But then, I came to Rice University my first year. I took a couple of courses on Chinese history, taught by Dr. Richard Smith, and I decided that it was really interesting. So I just kept studying that, and yeah, I ended up getting my PhD in history with a focus on 18th century China. So yeah.
I see. That's great. So kind of starting from young age, you
Mhm.
always knew like social sciences, not biology.
No, no, I really have this distinct memory of like dissecting bullfrogs, and I hated the smell. I hated the texture. It was like,
Yeah, that's
yeah, no, no,
understandable.
I like physics, but yeah.
Mm, yeah. Okay, now to go on a little bit about your immigration
Mhm.
experience. So I guess you touched on this a little bit, but how exactly did you move to how did you come to move to the States, and when and how did it happen?
Yeah, so it's probably not the most conventional path that I took. So my dad, as I mentioned, he was doing his PhD at Baylor. So he was on a student visa, F1. So when my mom and I joined him in Waco, I was on F2 visa, so I went through, like public school. I went to like a public school for high school, and then I went on to study in college myself. So like transition to F1 visa, and after that with grad school too, I was still on F1 visa. So it happened when I was like 15, almost turning 16. It was like December 2001. And I lived in Waco, Texas until summer 2004, and then Rice, and then I went on to grad school at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. But yeah, so one thing about the immigration history, I guess, is that I was on F1 visa, and I'm still actually a Korean citizen, so that meant I had to fulfill my military service, which is mandatory. So from 2012 to 2015, I took a leave from my grad program and then served as an officer by teaching history to cadets at Korean Military Academy, kind of like the Korean version of West Point. And then I came back, finished my degree, and yeah, so very kind of long, convoluted story. And also I met my wife there while I was doing the military service, my last year there. So, we got married in 2016 and applied for permanent residence. And I'm on green card now. And the plan for us is to stay in Houston, but I still keep my Korean citizenship because the Korean government doesn't recognize dual citizenships unless you're in a very specific category, which doesn't apply to me. Yeah.
I see. I see that you had a very dynamic immigration story
Yeah.
into everything later on. But what was the initial transition from Korea to the United States like? And what were some of the most striking differences that you noticed between the two countries?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure if it was like really between the two countries, but it was like between the cities. So as I mentioned, I grew up in Seoul. It's now like a city of, I guess, like 10 million, but when I was there, it was like 12 million. A big city by any way you look at it, it's a big city. And then I moved to Waco, Texas. I have a very distinct memory. The plane landed at the Dallas Fort Worth airport. So Dallas is a city, but then I noticed as we were, like getting closer and closer to Waco, like there were so much. There were so many cows everywhere. I had never seen that many cows in my life, and everything was flat. There was a lot of like land, Korea is pretty compact and it's pretty densely populated. So I think those were the things that really struck me at first. And honestly, I do think that I must have felt a lot of stress in my high school years because I wasn't like it wasn't something that we planned on moving to the States. So I knew some English, like I knew how to read some, but it was basically when I was growing up in Korea, then you didn't start learning English until you were in seventh grade. So like I really didn't was not prepared for like a US high school. So I think I must have had a lot of like felt a lot of stress and so on, but like actually everything worked out for me. So that's how memory works. I just remember like I mostly have good memories growing mostly good memories from my first few years in the States. Like I had this group of friends from church. We went camping a lot. We wrote a lot about like we're like really inspired by like Emerson and Thoreau and stuff. So like we wrote a lot, and that sort of stuff was really fascinating to me. And high school was like fine. I think since there were not that many Koreans at my school, I was like really forced to like pick up the language and so on. So I think after like a year or so, I was feeling pretty comfortable just getting around. So I think, yeah, other than that feeling of, wow, I'm living in the countryside, which is actually not true. Waco is a pretty, big city by, Texas standards. But back then I was feeling, oh, like I'm in this like, like hinterland or something like that. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's great that you had a relatively very positive first
Yeah.
year experience. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and my next question was that as you've mentioned, you've kind of lived in various like cities within and outside of Texas, like
Hmm.
Waco, St. Paul, Ann Arbor. So how would you describe the Asian American community in Houston in comparison with other cities that you've lived in?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so I mean, I moved here summer 2021, so I've been here for like over 2 years now, but I really haven't, like engaged that much with the Asian community here in Houston. Part of that was COVID. We moved here, in the middle of like I think it was like Delta wave or something. Uh so I am still like trying to figure that out. But for me, I think I was engaged the most with the Asian community when I was in Ann Arbor. Being a grad student there, I was by myself. So just, and there were a lot of Asian students who were studying abroad, and that was like the group that I felt most comfortable with at the time. So, just like yeah, engaged with them a lot. And when we moved to St. Paul, our second place, the after we bought a house, we found out that it was like an area of St. Paul that used to be like Koreatown, even though a lot of a lot of people and business had moved out to the suburbs. So that was nice. There was like a Korean immersion school nearby. There were a couple of Korean groceries and restaurants nearby. So that was nice, very small, but like close by. And so in a way, I feel like I was closer to the, like Korean community in Michigan and Minnesota than in Houston, which numerically has a lot more, but everything is spread out. And now I have my things going on. I'm busy, so it's not really. So I mean, I think probably Houston is like that for a lot of communities, not just immigrant communities. Like you can find your people, your group, whatever, but you just have to like make some effort and so on. It's not a very the logistics infrastructure I don't think are really there. Like you have to look for it.
Yeah, for sure. And then my next question was, out of Korea and the
Mhm.
different US cities that you've lived in, which place would you call home?
That's a great question. Hard to say. So last summer, we went to Korea, me and my wife, and our first son was like 2.5 at the time. And we were very excited to go because we hadn't been able to visit in a while, mainly due to COVID. But I definitely had this feeling that it didn't feel like home anymore, especially because my military years were like very formative in a way because I spent the last years of my 20s in Seoul, which used to be my home, and that's when I really felt like, oh, it is my home again. And then going back, Seoul is a type of city that changes so fast. We discovered that a lot of places that we used to go to weren't there anymore. It just felt different. So yeah, I definitely had this feeling that it didn't feel like home, but then, there are times where it feels like home. I mean, my parents still live there. They visited us recently, and now we're feeling nostalgic about Korea again. But yeah, I don't really know. I guess the closest thing that I could say to like a definite answer is like, home is where family is at the moment, is my wife and my two boys. But of course, my parents and my extended family are in Korea too. So, like Korea is home, but Houston is home too.
Yeah, that was definitely a tricky question, but thank you for your
Hmm.
answer. And to now go on about your college years and your education.
Hmm.
So at what point in your life were you inspired to study Asian studies?
Yeah, probably my freshman year in college because I mean I think this is something that a lot of heritage students go through. You come into college and you think you know about Asia because you probably like know some of the language that you grew up with. You've seen some like movies and shows and read some books. So I thought I knew about Asia. I mean I obviously spoke Korean and I knew a lot about Korean history and history in general. But I realized that there was a lot that I didn't know, and that there were more than one perspectives on looking at any event in history. So I think my freshman year, that's like what I really realized. And since then, I still like call myself a global historian, world historian of Asia, because my primary focus is on China, but I really do want to know about Asia in general and how Asia fits into the world. So and that is something that I really developed in my years in college and first few years in grad school as well, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Could you kind of elaborating on that? Could you describe your undergraduate years in Rice University?
Right, right, right.
So, how
So,
your
mhm,
academic interest evolved or what
right.
extracurricular activities? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So because of those two courses on Chinese history that I took in my freshman year, I took an interest in Chinese. I knew some Chinese characters, being of the generation that still learn Chinese characters as part of school curriculum, but I did not know how to speak it or anything like that. So I started taking Chinese my sophomore year, and then my junior year, I studied abroad in Beijing for a year. So that was really formative. I learned a lot of the language, but also more importantly, I discovered that China is so different from Korea, which I had kind of assumed, but not to that degree. So that was pretty shocking. And after that, I used to go back to Beijing very regularly, pretty much like every summer. So, undergrad years, studying Chinese and studying abroad were the key moments. And then I went on to grad school. Originally I was interested in doing research on Qing-Joseon relations, so Chinese Sino-Korean relations from like the 17th century to the 19th century. But then I realized this was back in 2008, and people were not that interested in Korea then. So I realized that I should do more to make my study more relevant. And then I met wonderful friends and mentors and began to think about how to compare Korea with Vietnam, which is another East Asian country that has had a very dynamic relationship with China. So added that to my study, and then as like kind of a counterpoint, I added today's Uzbekistan to my research as well. So basically, I've been doing that research for the past 10 years or so. It's been fruitful, but also very difficult.
I see. Could you elaborate a little more on the study abroad experience you had? Because I know
Mhm.
Rice offers programs like Rice in Taiwan or
Right.
was it something like
Yeah, right. I don't know if they still have this, but it was through a organization called CIEE. I forget what it stands for, but yeah, I don't think the rice had, like rice in countries then, but also it's like different because you go for like a semester or a year. And that was an interesting experience because as far as I can remember, my first semester, I was the only one from Rice. Second semester, I had an acquaintance from Rice, but basically the program gets people from, like colleges all over the US. So it was actually a very interesting way to, just like learn about, different colleges in the US. There were a lot of kids from like say USC, UPenn, like Georgetown, Notre Dame, and so on. So it was like a really good experience in a way. But I don't know if they still have that. And I don't think it was like the most well-run program, but there was like the if you wanted to get credits transferred, that was just like the easiest way to go about it. So and oh yeah, and I do remember now, I think they still have it, but a lot of my expenses were covered by Wagner scholarship for foreign studies or something. So that's been really, really great. Yeah.
I see, that's great.
Mhm.
My next question was, did you have any specific professors, mentors, or other students who left a significant impact on your life?
Just a second. Is someone's
Okay,
sorry. We're moving office next week, so
okay, no worries.
yeah.
Um, yeah, my question was, did you have any specific professors,
Mhm.
mentors, or other students who left a significant impact on you during your Rice years?
Oh yeah, definitely. Professor Richard Smith, he was my advisor. He advised my honors thesis for the history department. And he, he's still around. We still keep in touch. We have lunch every now and then. So really left a big impression on me, and still does. Um, yeah, and also Carrie Ward, I think she I know that she's more into, African studies and like and I know she's doing some research on Houston as well, but she was engaged more a lot more with Southeast Asia when I was there, and she offered this class that I don't think is there anymore, but it was called Bondage in World History or something like that. But it was like the first class that I took that really showed me what world history was, not just history of world, but like something that can bring in different experiences, different records, different trends to really make to have this like synthesize not necessarily unify but very very nuanced understanding of the world. So I think those two professors, Richard Smith, Carrie Ward, I would say they left a really big impact on me. And Carrie was actually she did her PhD at Michigan too. So there was that. We share this one of the same. We share a same advisor as well, who is also Southeast Asianist and a world historian. So yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing that you're still able to stay in touch with them and have such a
yeah.
relationship.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and so next, could you describe your experience of earning your master's and PhD degrees at the University of Michigan?
Yeah. I had a wonderful time there. So I went into the PhD program, straight out of Rice, and it's pretty common, I think. So I had no intention of getting master's, even though you can apply to get a master's degree after the first 2 years of coursework, I think. And to apply for the position at the Korean Military Academy, I needed a master's degree, and that's why I did it. But anyway, it was very interesting. At first, I was a little bit disappointed because there were not many grad students there who were doing research on China. There were a few who were doing research on Asia, but it also really forced me to get out of my comfort zone. I took a lot of courses that were thematic in nature. So, like courses on, like, say, nationalism in Europe, courses on, Southeast Asia, which at that point, I was not interested in Southeast Asia. I had a vague understanding of Vietnamese history. So it was a wonderful opportunity for me to really just learn anything I wanted to learn. And my advisor, Perry Cassell, he was fairly new professor. He had been in Michigan for like 2 years, and let me, he it really let me do, like what I wanted to do. So I have really very fond memories of my, coursework years at Michigan. So the first 3 years. And then I was going to be in Beijing for a full year for my field work for the dissertation research. But then, the call for the Korean Military Academy position came up. So I had to cut that short after 4 months, and then I moved to Korea, and then came back to Michigan. And that time, at that point, it was not as fun because it's really not fun to work on your dissertation. It's a very solitary experience, and especially for me because I had taken a leave for 3 years. So a lot of my friends from grad school, people in my cohort, were already gone. And if they were there, they were stressed because they had to finish dissertation. Job market is stressful and so on. But overall, really good experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And kind of as a follow-up question, how
Mhm.
do you kind of compare and contrast the history and Asian studies, like teaching and learning scenes between Rice and University of Michigan?
Wow, that's a great question. So these are two institutions that are very, different. Michigan is a state school, is huge. University of Texas at Austin would be a good comparison. So, uh, well, as far if I were looking at it from like an undergrad perspective, I think Rice was great, at least for me, because you have small classes, you get to like actually talk to your professors and so on. I mean, I TA'd at Michigan a bunch, but most classes there are like in big lecture rooms, and you are never going to talk to your professor. You talk to your TAs, so it's a very different type of experience. At the same time, you are, like in, but yeah, so as an undergrad who may need like more direction, which was the case for me, I really prefer the experience at Rice, small classes, thematic specialized courses versus more generic, not generic, but more general courses. As a grad student, it's a little bit different because Michigan at the time had the biggest history department in the country. So that meant you had a lot of because in grad school, it's not just about taking classes. It's about collaboration and, like working with the professors and, grad students. So it meant that I had a lot more options to pursue what I wanted to pursue. So that was a really great environment. You could pretty much find anyone who was working on something that you were interested in. But I would assume that teaching at Michigan is probably very different than, teaching at Rice. I know that is, for example, very hard to set up a new course at Michigan. You have to go through multiple like levels of bureaucracy and so on. Whereas Rice is very easy, and I also do like that it's so much of the enrollment is word of mouth because Rice is that sort of community. So I do really enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think I really appreciate how the Rice Asian department has such unique courses, and there's always
Mhm, mhm.
courses like every semester. So,
Yeah.
um, Okay, and now moving on to kind of your career. So
Mhm.
how did you initially come to pursue a PhD, and how did you specifically choose to be like a university professor?
Could you repeat the first part of the question? Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't.
How did you initially come to pursue a PhD?
Okay. Well, I was very uninformed, which actually is something you see a lot among PhD students. So I just enjoyed studying, and I didn't want to go to the military yet. And for that, needed to keep my student visa F1. So I figured, oh, like grad school is also school, so it's probably a continuation of college. So I went in not thinking about much. Looking back, I don't know what I was thinking because first of all, I did not have any good writing samples from Asian history. So I used to take a lot of classical history courses. So like my writing sample was actually on Thucydides, which is, I mean, I don't even know like why they, like admitted me. So it was very uninformed. My advisor that I chose was an assistant professor, which means he didn't have tenure. And you do not want to choose a untenured professor as your advisor, because if he or she does not get tenure, then they're going to be gone and you are left without an advisor. I didn't understand any of that. So it was a very uninformed decision. I just applied to to what in my mind was like, well, what according to US World News was top 10 programs in history. So I just like applied, and I got into, the only PhD program I got into was Michigan, and a couple of other master's programs. And I was like, well, I don't want to do master's, so I'll just go to Michigan. So it was in a way kind of a rash decision. Yeah. And oh yeah, and also like, well, and after you've done that, so when I was done with coursework, I was 25. So probably could have done, a lot of other things in life if I wanted to. But then, I did military and I came back. I'm like 28 now. And, and that's when you realize, even though I really do love being a professor, at 28 years old with a master's degree in history and no work experience, you kind of have to like pursue that career and see if you can make it, because otherwise you have to start from the very beginning when other people have been working for like 6 years. So I decided to stick with it and worked really hard and worked hard, got lucky, and yeah, so here I am still a professor, and I hope that I'll be teaching and doing research for a long time to come.
I see. Next, could you describe your experience at the University of St. Thomas?
Hmm. Yeah, that was a very interesting experience. First of all, it's a Catholic school. Never experienced that. It was kind of unique in the sense that it was I forget what the word is, but we didn't have to like answer to like the local bishop or cardinal or whatever. So you did get more room to maneuver. So that was interesting. But also I had never been to Minnesota. My wife had never been to Minnesota. And we realized when we got there that Twin Cities, even though it's a pretty big growing city, it's still in a way very local. It's very regional. Especially people who were born and raised in Minnesota, they tend to hang out with their like, say high school friends. St. Thomas, even though they're trying to change that, still very much a regional school. Most students come from, Minnesota and the Midwest. So that was very interesting because actually, I guess when I was at Rice was somewhat like that too, because the majority of students then still did come from Texas, but still it was very interesting. A lot of uh, yeah, a lot of that regional vibe, and also it was a different kind of job in a sense because I was in the history department there. Here I'm in the Department of Transnational Asian Studies, and also St. Thomas was a type of school that they have a lot of like required courses they have to take. The common core curriculum is very like rigidly set. So that meant that most of the courses that I taught were going to be intro courses that counted towards this core curriculum. So usually I taught, intro to like modern East Asia or intro to like world history. So yeah, there was that. But two institutions do have some things in common, pretty small class size and so on. But it was very much a teaching school. There was not a lot of support for research, so I was happy teaching there, but I was wanting more support for my research and more time because you also teach more, courses there versus at Rice.
I see. And how many years were you at St. Thomas for again?
3 years, but it feels in a way shorter because middle of year two, COVID happened. So yeah, but yeah, I was there for 3 years.
I see.
Mhm.
And then for your experience at the Korea Military Academy,
Mhm.
um, were the classes taught in Korean? And if it, like, how did the different, like, language, culture, and values impact your time at the KMA?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, all the courses were taught in Korean. So there was an interesting experience because although I obviously spoke Korean at home and so on, there's a difference between and in any language, difference between language that we speak at home, you speak at home and among friends and family, versus like professional settings. So there is that. Also, it's a military environment, so they have their own set of vocabulary and jargons and conventions and so on. So that was interesting. As far as classes went, I actually thought this was pretty similar to the courses that I taught at St. Thomas. Of course, at St. Thomas, I got to design the courses myself, but at Korean Military Academy, it's even more rigid setting of common core curriculum. So every freshman has to take Korean history. Every sophomore has to take world history, which meant we had this bunch of like maybe every semester like 5, 6 professors teaching one of those subjects, and we all had to cover exactly same thing. So that is interesting because like you don't get to design your courses, and you cannot digress too much from the material that you have to teach because also because like the GPA and so on, very important there. Like for the cadets, like future careers, what they want to do. So you have to make sure that everyone is taught the same thing so that no one class is like put in an advantageous or disadvantageous position vis-a-vis others. So that was very interesting. But I did learn a lot. It was fun to be in Korea for like all 4 seasons for one, because I had only gone back in summer before. And I really like food. Korea is full of seasonal foods. I got to, yeah, like 3 full years of like all 4 seasons. And I got to learn a lot about Korean society, culture that I did not know as a teenager. And a lot of fun. Seoul is a very fun city when you're in your 20s. So much to do. But then I also realized that I would never want to be a junior professor or like junior anything in Korean workplace because like you get stuck with all the work, and I mean I just don't want that. So I knew after like year one that I did not want to start my academic career, professional career in Korea because that's something that appealed to me. So I've been lucky that I was not forced to do so.
Yeah, and kind of based on those 3 years of teaching experience you had in a
Mhm.
Korean university, how should you compare and contrast your education and teaching experience in Korea versus the States, like kind of both from like a student and an instructor point of view?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question. As a student, I think I realized it a lot at the high school level because in Korea, I understand that is like a little bit less the case, but in Korea, there's the Sunung, the National College Entrance Exam, and it's once a year. You have to do well in that to go to, like a good university and major of your choosing. So I really didn't like high school in Korea. I did, fine at school, but it just really wasn't fun for me unless it was a subject that I was interested in. And then I came to the US and I realized that even at the high school level, you can actually choose some of your classes, like especially if you're doing, AP stuff. So that was very appealing to me. And then college, mm, I mean, I think it might be something that's more unique to Rice, but yeah, small classes, a lot of discussion, and also the majors that I chose, history and Asian studies. I mean, I know from my friends that if you're in engineering, if you're in music, architecture, then there too, you do have this like set of courses that you have to take, and so on. But I really like that room for maneuver and just like freedom to explore the topics of my interests that seem to be characteristic of Rice, at least. So I really enjoyed that. As far as teaching went, I do realize that Korean Military Academy is a very unique institution because I mean it is true that you would not you would be designing your own courses at other universities in Korea, but I still do think that I really enjoy the freedom to teach courses that I like. And I guess in a way, as I was talking about, as I was saying about Michigan, I think even in the US at state schools, you might have more bureaucracy and you have to do certain things. But I've only worked at two private schools, St. Thomas and Rice, and that has been very, enjoyable for me. Is that room to maneuver.
Yeah, that's great. And now to talk about your current
Mhm,
position as a professor at Rice.
mhm.
How would you describe your experience as an assistant professor under the Transnational Asian Studies Department? Like especially considering how you earned your bachelor's degree under the same department.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of a dream come true. I mean, something that, especially in humanities, like you never know where you're going to end up for a job, like because I mean every year is different positions that open up. So I never like dreamed that I would be back at Rice as a professor. So it's nice to be back, first of all. And second, it's a really good job in the sense there's a lot of support for research. You get uh, with leaves, with research funding, and so on. It's very generous, very helpful. And also in terms of teaching, I really enjoy teaching at Rice because already I mean, I've taught here for like only 2 years because I'm on leave right now this semester, but I've already taught like a couple of new classes and they've been very good. And some of these are going to go into my rotation, but I really enjoy working with my students. I really enjoy working within the system. Partly probably because I know the system. But yeah, it is also good to be back. When I started out as a Asian studies major, it was a center. There was no department. It was much smaller. But now we have a department, we have a lot more vibrant center. So it is nice to be back and, like feel that I can, continue to help build this because we just got started. And I think we are in a really good position because we're in this city, Houston, very dynamic, very diverse, and a lot of Asian communities that are represented in the student body and among the larger staff and faculty. So it's really good to feel like that I'm somewhere where I can like work for a long time and make a difference in a positive way.
Yeah, I'm sure it was really exciting to see like the center turn into a whole department. So
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
keep going. So
And I mean, actually, like because of COVID, universities were not hiring, right? So like I actually had like given up on finding another job. So that's why we then bought a house in St. Paul. And I wasn't even looking at the job postings anymore. And one day my wife just told me, it's like, hey, like, there is like a job at Rice. So I applied, but like I wasn't even planning on moving. So very fortuitous, yeah.
yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
So now to ask a bit about your research.
Mhm.
So from reading a little bit about your research and also taking one of your classes, I
Mhm.
noticed that you kind of emphasize like the global intersections and
Mhm.
interactions between different states. So how did you come to specifically focus on more of like a global approach rather than like stud concentrating within like a set of
Mm.
programs?
Mm. Yeah, a lot of that was the function of, as I mentioned earlier, there were not that many students at Michigan who were, working on Asia, let alone China, and like definitely not, the Qing period that I was interested in. So a lot of that was like the product of me having to go out of my comfort zone to learn about things and to try to craft something that may be interesting. So there was that specific circumstance of Michigan program, but also I guess like I've always been kind of interested in global interactions due to my own personal experience. Just like moving to a different place, learning a new language, meeting people, and also especially after I moved to Michigan, because Michigan is a type of school that attracts grad students from all over the world. So that was really fascinating to me. So I've always been drawn into these contact zones and just like intercultural communications, and I've always enjoy learning about other societies and also studying languages and so on.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect segue because I was
Hmm.
ask how did you come to learn so many different languages other than Korean and English? And
Hmm.
how would you say like your multilingualism has impacted your career in terms of like communicating to other scholars or deeper firsthand understanding of historical material or any other reasons?
Yeah, yeah. That's a great question. So I didn't always enjoy learning languages. English I learned because I had to. Didn't have many Korean friends at my high school in Waco. Chinese I enjoyed learning because there was a language that I was interested in, and was also very essential to do my research. Afterwards, though, like I picked up a few languages such as Manchu, Vietnamese, Uzbek, and so on. And a lot of that actually came to me when I was working on my dissertation. So as I mentioned earlier, working on your dissertation can be a very solitary experience. You're writing hundreds of pages, and it's very hard uh, to see and feel like you're making any progress on a daily basis. So actually, there were two things that I picked up during that time, even though, like I kind of let go of the first one. So, like just going to the gym and learning languages, because these are two things that you can really see what you've done during the day. On a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. So that's when I really started learning languages like as like almost a hobby. And I think it's been good for me because I've always been a textual person. So I used to be only interested in, let's say, I'm working on, like for my book, a couple of chapters on today's borderland frontier between China and Uzbekistan. I used to be only interested in like part of Uzbekistan that like from 18th century, and that just that region. I used to be only interested in that, but now after learning some of the language, I'm interested in like a lot of different things that might not necessarily go into my immediate research, but I just enjoy learning about it. And right now, we went through COVID, and I have two young boys now, so traveling is a little bit more tricky now. But I do hope that in the future I will get to travel more, and just like learn to experience these societies, learn to experience these societies uh, firsthand, and then just get to communicate using the language that I've learned. I don't get to do that too much now, but I guess that's what. Uh, but I still get to do it, like online, in a way. I get to watch like Turkish shows on Netflix, so that's nice.
Yeah, for sure. Did you self-learn the languages or through a class?
So Chinese and Manchu I learned through a class. Japanese, Vietnamese, Turkish, others I learned by myself, because I mean, I do want to know how to talk, but my most immediate focus is just reading in these languages. Like even simple things such as, like, if I can look at Wikipedia in these languages, then I can like see, I have access to a lot of information that I otherwise don't. So that's why I was able to self teach. I've used a couple of apps that have worked for me. But I mean, everyone has different style of learning, so I don't know if it's for everyone, but it's been good for me.
Yeah, that's great. And just out of curiosity, is
Mhm.
Manchu language still being taught at school or?
No, it's a pretty much a dead language, in the sense that, so the Manchu language has a cousin language, I guess, called Shiba, and it is still spoken by the Shiba minority in China today. But Manchu, I mean, at this point, probably no one really speaks it. So I know how to read it, because a lot of documents from the Qing period are in Manchu. So I yeah, no, it's not taught at school, except for like there are a few schools across the world, like China, US, Korea, Japan, that teaches it, but it's not like something that you would learn in, say, high school.
Mm. Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of Manchu studies, could you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about your role as the secretary of the Manchu Studies group?
Right, right. Yeah. So I served as a secretary for 3 years, from 2020 to 2023. And right now I'm actually, in my first like year as the president. But our main role is just trying to there are not that many scholars who are doing research in on Manchu. So we just like try to serve as like an online space, and sometimes offline space, where these scholars who are interested in Manchu Manchu matters, can just get together, and then mm, interact with one another. So one thing that we do is that Association of Asian Studies has annual meetings in March, and we always have this like meeting in conjunction, where like we have our agenda, but like to me, really it's more about like learning about, like what Manchu courses are being taught online, who are like what are new works that are being published, who are the new students that might be interested in pursuing this, so that we can like foster this like little community that we have. Yeah, as secretary, a lot of my work was just like I had to do the minutes of these meetings, and coordinating some things. I really wanted to introduce some of the Manchu studies going on across the world, but that project didn't really like take off. So I do hope that I can, uh, give that a go for the next 3 years when I'm serving as the president.
Yeah, that's great. Now to move on to some questions about being
Mhm.
an Asian American. How do you think your identity as an Asian American influences your teaching and your approach in your career? So like, do you find that your upbringing, such as the experiences you had during your adolescence years in Korea, kind of influences your career and your general approach to life?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's something that I'm always like, working on. I try to work on, but I think in all my courses, there are many things that I try to teach, but I think the core message is like how we can, cultivate empathy, like where are these people coming from? Like what are they experiencing? Why might there be like mistranslation in a broad sense, and how may we like still try to get past that and communicate? So I think all my courses are in a way about cultivating empathy, and I really try to do that myself, although it's very hard to do. And I do like that, especially at Rice, any class that I have, I'm going to have students and myself who are coming from many different backgrounds, and we can talk about these issues. And that's also why when there is interest, so I don't know the product protocol about that, but every now and then I'll get like students you know like from community who want to audit my classes, and like some people I understand, and I mean I can understand why don't want to necessarily allow that, but I always like to I'll bring someone in. So one of the class that I'm teaching next semester, I just got an email from a woman who is like in her 60s, recently retired from Houston, and she was interested in taking auditing the course. And I was sure, because like I think like that's like one more perspective that she can bring in, because one thing that is very important to realize that we might not realize as like young students and professors, grad students, is that despite all the like diversity that may exist in the classroom, if everyone is like between the ages of 18 and 22, that's going to limit some of the terms of discussion. So I'm really excited to learn more about what she has to think about our content, our discussions, and so on.
Yeah, I'm sure she's gonna add a lot of valuable contributions.
Mhm.
So that's great.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, sometimes it can backfire, but that's yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And my next question is, what is your view on the Asian history education scene in the States? So how would you assess like the adequacy of secondary and higher education institutions,
Mhm.
including Asian history, like as part of the curriculum?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, and I don't know if I'm actually like qualified to answer the question in a intelligent way. But as far as higher education goes, which is something that I have more experience in, one, it is a field that is growing, Asian studies, but there needs to be some more, I think, effort. So usually you will have Asian studies and Asian American studies. And I think there needs to be a lot more communication between the two institutions, which is hard because on administrative bureaucratic level, they are usually in different units, but also there are professional, personal reasons that such interactions might not happen on a regular basis. So I'm glad that at Rice, with the umbrella of transnational Asia, we try to like bring both parties fields together. So that is something that we could work on. More courses on Asian studies and Asian American studies in general, but also more collaboration between the groups. As far as secondary education goes, I don't know too much about it, but my understanding is that it's still lacking. Like the biggest thing that I notice is that world history you learn in high school might not cover a lot of Asia, and that is obviously something that we'll need, years and decades of like, research, teaching, and, like curriculum management and so on. So I think that is something that really should be tackled because, I mean, sometimes it's easy to forget that, the vast majority of people don't go to, college. So high school is a space where you need to be able to be exposed to as many things as possible, and that is partly how I felt at St. Thomas. I knew that most of my students were only going to take like one course on Asia if I was teaching it. So all I wanted to do really was like to give them like basic understanding about the subject, but also like just like have them get more curious. It could be through the topics that they're interested in, or it could be just like by connecting, the past that is being discussed in the course material and the moment that we are living in. But I think there just needs to be a lot more exposure at the secondary education level, which I don't know much about, but I always hear that there isn't that there's a lot of room for growth there.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of on a similar note,
Mhm.
how important would you say it is for Asian American students to learn about and just be cognizant of Asian studies and the history?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm biased, but I obviously think it's important. And I, think that most students do realize that because and I think that's like one really great thing about having, say, distribution, right? Like D1, D2, D3, like you have to take 12 hours and then you can kind of like go for courses that might be genuinely interesting to you rather than something that you have to do as part of your major. So I think it's very important. One thing is because like what you may learn from home among family and friends might be very different from what you learn in the classroom, and sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that can be uncomfortable, but I mean, it is something that is helpful for anyone trying to, like learn more about not just where you're coming from, but why the world, is the way it is today. And also, like on another note, there's like some, so just to like to give a quick review of the discipline of Asian studies wasn't really something that was there. It really got started during the Cold War out of the like geopolitical political interest. But what that also meant was that the first generation of scholars were usually not coming from like Asian American background. They probably they did have a lot of experience like working in these regions that they studied. Maybe they were missionary kids and so on. But now the field does look a lot more different. You have a lot of scholars of Asian American and Asian background represented. So if you're not taking these courses, and maybe if you're not going on to study more, maybe if you're not like supporting these this field, then you'll never see representation, which is something that most people want. So I think it's very important.
Yeah, I think it's definitely really interesting and important to see how the Asian studies discipline has grown over the past
Hmm.
decades and to see it continue to grow. So,
Hmm.
yeah, and now to move on to questions about your identity.
Hmm.
Um, First, what does your Korean heritage mean to you?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Well, means many different things, but since we just welcome our second son over the summer, so like I right now a lot of my mind is occupied by my kids. But at the most basic level, it means that my first boy is like 3, almost 4 now. He calls me Appa, so that's what it means. Like that, we have that relationship. Of course, fatherhood is a universal phenomenon, but there is something that's very specific about that experience that I'm happy to share with my son. So there is that. It also means that when I cook at home, most of what I cook is going to be Korean. Maybe like some of them are not like authentic because I make my own modifications and so on. But yeah, so it just means to me preserving and recreating some of the experiences that I had growing up in Korea and growing up in spending time in the US, in China, elsewhere as a Korean person. And so that's going to look and feel all different given the situation.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and my next question is, how would you like to be remembered? So whether that's as a friend, as a professor, a family member. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Haven't really thought about that much, because to me, because in academia, like your career trajectory tends to be more delayed than maybe in other fields. So I still like think of myself as like, up and coming. Like yeah, I've been out of grad school for a while now, but since I moved from St. Thomas to Rice, I still think of myself as like just getting started. So I haven't really thought about that much, but I, do want to. Hmm, I do want to be remembered as like I guess like a teacher of some sort. Like it doesn't have to be like classroom material. There are things that I want to teach my sons about. There are things that I want to teach my students and people that I interact with. So teacher and a student because I also do learn from everyone that I interact with. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And my last few questions will be about kind of like advice for the future
Mhm.
generations. So first, what are your hopes for the next few decades within the Asian studies slash history academic community, and what do you hope will be further studied, emphasized, or valued in this field?
Yeah. Great question. Here again, I'm biased, but I would really like to see a lot more interactions between, scholars, students who are interested in like distinct territorial units, whether that be, China, Korea, India, Vietnam. I really do think that Asia needs to be studied as a whole, and we really do need to think about Asia in global perspectives. And since we are we are based in the U.S. right now, and that is something that is a big problem in the U.S. To emphasize that the world doesn't mean the US, and there are many other parts of the world that Asia has been and will be interacting with. So that is definitely something that I want to see in the near future. So that, and another thing that I want to see is this is kind of like in a way I think a losing battle, but I really do think we need to go back to have some basics on like geography and languages. Languages actually maybe geography. I think it's like a big thing now. I feel like we have so many resources that are available that we're just like not using. I mean, like so much of my research involves using just Google Maps to like look at these places, trying to look at the topography and so on. It's so easy now to do these things, and yet we perhaps know the least about the world geography than any previous generation, probably because we don't, like we're not taught that. So something there's some kind of basics that start at the primary, secondary education level. I would like to see that.
Yeah, for sure. My next question is, do you have any advice for Asian American students in general, and also for those who are hoping to pursue a career in history, Asian studies, and or teaching?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, so one advice that I have would be that one piece of advice would be that a lot of students like today, because I mean, things are hyper competitive everywhere, like to get to college, to be successful in college setting and then after college. So I think there's often this pressure to just like do things that will be immediately useful to you, which is like great. That's a very practical way of doing things. But I do feel that sometimes, I mean, I'm 37 now, so some of my friends are in their 40s and so on, and think I see this. But there will come to a point where like maybe you are successful in your job. Maybe you got a job, you went into your field after graduating from college, 22, and stay in that field for 20 years, and like you still have like your whole life ahead of you, and you don't know what you actually like, enjoy doing, what inspires you and so on. So I just want to like tell my students that what you do in college, it doesn't have to define who you are the rest of your working career, the rest of your life. You can feel free to explore, and that there's always like you can always come back to school. You can always switch careers. Like average lifespan now, especially since I'm an early modern historian, we live so much longer than we used to. There's a lot that we can do, and there's a lot that uh, we can do, and we'll be stuck with such long spans of life if we don't find out what inspires us and what we really truly enjoy. So, like I would say, just try to, like learn what is fun to you, what is inspiring to you, what is meaningful to you. You might not do it immediately after graduation, but something that you can, like think about for the rest of your life. And I guess in a way, so the advice would be, like don't stop learning. You don't have to stop learning just because you graduate from college. There's always something to learn. And as I mentioned earlier, it's such a good time to learn things. There are so many resources out there, wonderful lectures, wonderful apps that can help you. So just stay curious and, keep learning.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice that a lot of college students should hear. So thank you for that. My last question for you is, if you could go back in time and give a piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Yeah. It would be to uh, to enjoy the moment, because now I see, looking back, especially, military years, last years of grad school when I was working on dissertation and applying to jobs, I let the anxiety and stress about the future prevent me from enjoying the present. Now I can look back and see there's like so much that I missed just because I was stressed out about like the future, and I just couldn't see what was around me. I wish I had enjoyed more of Korea. I wish I had enjoyed more of Michigan, but just couldn't do it. And it's of course easier said than done, but um yeah, just try to appreciate what you have around you right now. That would be my advice. And probably I won't listen to that advice, but yeah, I'll still give it to my former self.
Yeah, so yeah, those are all the questions I had prepared. Did you
Mhm.
have anything that you'd like to add on before we end the interview?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't think so, but I mean, I think it'd be very interesting to maybe be interviewed in like 10 years or something again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. We'll come back
Mhm.
in 10 years.
Okay.